Hello and welcome to Business Unmuted, a business discussion broadcast live on LinkedIn and available for download from the very best podcast sites. My name is Joss Havakin and I usually produce Business Unmuted, but as Graham's still away and enjoying some time away from the office, he's asked me to step in. I'm a bit nervous, hope it all goes well. It's National Apprenticeship Week this week, with Build to the Future returning for its second year as a theme. Today we'll be speaking with one of the largest apprenticeship providers in the region. And the change in interest rates takes place today. The Bank of England's MPC voted last week to raise interest rates to 0.5%, up from 0.25%. The bank is hoping that this may knock back inflation, which is sitting at 5.4%, with some experts thinking it could hit as high as 7% by April. My guests today are James Dentith, Head of Strategic Development for Baltic Apprenticeships, and David Osborne, Managing Director of Roman, which has the UK's largest showering manufacturing plant over its base in County Durham. So James, figures from the Department of Education show that 40% more people started apprenticeships last year and the year before than pre-pandemic. So is this what you're seeing at Baltic?
Yeah, so we've seen year on year fantastic growth, and I think that's been thanks to a massive shift, not just in the online presence, so COVID's facilitated a lot of that growth, but also the perceptions of apprenticeships. People are understanding that it's a viable alternative to university, and for a lot of scenarios and a lot of individuals, it's actually a preferable route. You know, getting that industry experience and learning more about yourself as well, you know, where you fit in this organisation, in this new culture. So yeah, we've seen fantastic growth. And
it's not just growth in numbers, is it? I mean, you were saying before that there's some new apprenticeships that you've been developing. One of them sounded a little bit sexy. It was a data scientist kind of apprenticeship. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and the reasons why?
Yeah, so again, thanks to COVID, you know, we've got to look at the positives, look at what we can achieve from this working together, and the use of data and the importance in all organisations has been a massive spike. You know, not just in terms of sales or, you know, online presence, but really improving processes and making sure that you're getting the most out of everything. So data technician is our new level 3 apprenticeship standard, and what's really exciting is, you know, the opportunities that it has to fit into businesses of all shapes and sizes, you know, crossing over multiple industries, different sectors, whether it's finance, business, sales, marketing. You know, there's an opportunity there for you to capitalise on data, and I'd argue that if you're not capitalising on that data now, you're possibly behind competitors, you're possibly not making the most of what you could.
Okay, well, in the Leveling Up white paper which came out last week, there was 12 different missions, one of which was talking about getting hundreds of thousands more people into what they called high quality skills training. Now, for me, my impression of apprentices before I came to know some of the ones that we've had here at Recognition and in other roles was that maybe they get, you know, go and make us a cup of tea, get sent to the shop for spirit level bubbles, a bucket to catch sparks. Is that the case now? You know, what kind of roles do an apprentice play in a business?
Yeah, that's something that we hear all the time. Tart and paint as well. You know, another
solid
one to get out there. But no, again, it's changed massively. And the apprenticeship levy that came in 2017 and the transition from apprenticeship frameworks to standards was hugely responsible for that. So apprenticeship programs that are designed by employers. You know, these are programs where they really delve into what an employer wants to see from this program and what's going to benefit a candidate as well. So that's been key in changing it. But a massive thing has just been the advocates, you know, yes, Baltic and training providers like us, but also employers being a lot more vocal. And I think that's what I've really enjoyed from this National Apprenticeship Week already. You're seeing this genuine content coming out from employers and apprentices celebrating what they've achieved. And, you know, there was a time where apprenticeships were a tick box. You know, you tick this box, yeah, I did social media post. Tick this box, yeah, I sent an email out, it was really good. But now it's so much more than that. It's delving into the key elements of a job that makes a digital marketer, you know, an infrastructure technician. You know, what do these individuals need to learn to be able to really, really engage and not just do a 12-month placement, but start a viable and long-lasting career. So yeah, it's changed massively, and it's great to hear from people that, you know, they're taking on an apprentice for the first time, because it proves that their preconceptions and their misconceptions have been changed. So every time that we get that, it's a massive win.
Oh, excellent. Well, David, I'll come to you. You're an employer that presumably you have some apprentices?
Yeah, no, I'd really endorse that. Really. I mean, we've as a manufacturer, we've always had apprenticeships across the business, and we've currently got 9. I mean, a lot of our senior managers have come through the apprenticeship schemes. It's great, but I mean, we struggled. I think it's the whole perception's changed. To go back 10 years, we were really struggling to even get applications, and we'd go and speak to schools, and it was actually the education system to me that wasn't understanding what apprenticeship was about. It was treating it as cheap labour rather than training on the job and paid training, and really as we see it, and that really does fundamentally change. We've got great people across R&D, production, marketing. There's apprenticeships everywhere with us.
So do you think that the government's focus on apprenticeships has developed a better apprenticeship programme and therefore better candidates for you?
I think it's that, but I think it's just been an ongoing 10-year campaign to actually raise awareness and offer it as a viable option against university. It doesn't suit everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an issue with that as a business with Roman hat on, but across our industry, being construction, bathrooms, plumbing, massive issue there with apprenticeships, where that's trying to be tackled now. And I was down at an event in Parliament last week exactly about that, and the skills gap, skills shortage that's really looming and changing the whole nature of the industry. You've got especially in the south of England, they're really struggling to get numbers. You look at the age of plumbers, it's terrifying. The average age of installers and plumbers is like 51, 52.
And I know that's going to be a big issue as we get to net zero as well. These people are later in life, they don't have the skills or the capacity to develop.
There's all of that, but it's just been really underinvested in. And I was down. It was a lovely acronym, but BIKBBI, which is the Institute of Bathroom, Kitchen, Plumbing Installers, etc.
Brilliant.
And a lot of MPs involved. It was really very good, but it was pointing out quite blatantly that you look at the forecast for construction growth, fantastic, slap yourselves on the back. But if you look at the numbers who are leaving the trade and who are not going into it, it's not going to be achieved unless something changes. And I mean, at the moment it's being managed by a lot of off-site manufacture for bathrooms and kitchens, which is turning that into factory production rather than on-the-job skills. But it's you can't really ignore, especially what we were looking at last week. You can't ignore that the figures are quite terrifying if things aren't addressed properly and quickly.
I think just getting people into the roles that we need for the economy is a big issue anyway. With more than 1 million vacancies across the UK, something needs to be done.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I'll come back to actually Roman's kind of core function as a business. 18 months ago, start of the pandemic, maybe 2 years ago now, we saw a big uptick in people doing home improvements. Queues out of B&Q was all over the news, and the range and the like. How did the pandemic affect you back in those early days?
Well, we were very linked to construction. Construction was flying and trying not to close till I think the media sort of forced that in the end.
Yeah.
And so we actually had a very, very short 3-week actual shutdown, and then it got back fairly quickly. And pretty much all of our competitors are importing Chinese finished goods. They were struggling getting stuff out of China, so the market was booming, we were booming. It was great, but then I think everything hit a brick wall sort of middle of last year, just with supply chains, and I think everything you've seen about moving components around the world or finished goods, and very, very tough 6 months to get to where we are now and get sorted, get back on level playing field. It's demand did spike, but there wasn't the supply to really back it up across everything, and that's not. I'm talking building industry across the whole.
Yeah, did you find any kind of issues with people having to isolate? We had the ping-demic not too long ago.
We had a bit of that. I've got to say, for us it wasn't. I think we had fairly sensible workforce, so I don't think we had any major issues with that. I mean, a few people. I think some of the stories you heard around the place. Yeah, it was not great, but I think we've got through all that. It wasn't really an issue for us. It was more supply chain.
Okay, now you mentioned supply chain. Obviously, that's been listed as one of the main causes of inflation as it is at the moment. How are you finding raw materials?
It's unprecedented would be the sort of easy answer. I mean, our core thing is aluminium. Aluminium's gone from that's almost a 20-year average at $1,850 a tonne to, as this morning, 3,120. I mean, it's not based on demand. It's crazy. And then you factor into that shipping. If you're bringing components in, shipping's 800%. 800% from, and it happened so quickly. It was in 6 months, and a lot of construction stuff. You're on fixed price projects. You're on perhaps 3-month notice for price increases. Very difficult to move that quickly. So that's been a real struggle for the industry. But where you are now is, we've been talking to Bank of England on this quarterly about this, and they've been putting their figures in, and they were admitting it was going to go to 4 and then 4.5, and now you see where it is. I mean, they're now tentatively saying 7, but it'll come down quickly. And when you look at, construction products, of course we're not the whole economy, but it's easily running above 20-25% on pretty much every material, if you can get it.
So do you think it may go higher than 7%?
I fear that. I just hope it, we've seen the commodity prices, say aluminium came down, it's gone back up again. Steel's gone up to doubled from what it was. So you factor that in, nothing's actually really coming down yet. Shipping isn't really coming down yet. So I know they're trying to foster this picture that it spikes and drops as quickly as it went up.
Mm-hmm. Don't see it happening.
Personally, I can't see that. I'd love to see it. Obviously, it would be fabulous from every angle and the industry's angle, but I can't see that quickly. So I think that it just shows the over-reliance to me of what we're doing as a nation on importing stuff from essentially China, and we've got to be, I think it's the longer it stays, the longer it drives people into made in Britain manufacturing, and that's so right, because that's got to be the key going forward, and be more, especially in the post-Brexit era. I think we have to be looking at our own sustainability, both in economic terms and in environmental terms. Really, it's you can't just keep shipping large boxes from China and expecting that's your long-term plan. It's patently not, and this is showing that clearly.
Absolutely, and that's why.
So good for us in the long term, short-term difficulties, but yeah, it's.
Well, we're just talking there about inflation, James, and obviously the cost of living. People are saying it's a crisis. What does an apprentice get paid nowadays? It used to be kind of, 3-4 quid an hour. I had mates when I was 16, 17 who were getting less than 100 quid a week. Is that comparative now?
Yeah, I mean, inflation is taking its toll, and thankfully apprentices' wage is not still £50 a week. I think what an apprentice gets paid is dependent on the sector, the training provider, the employer. The minimum an apprentice could get in an annual salary is about £7,500, thereabouts, which is terrifying low. No one can afford to live on that.
No, but 16 living at home, I think it might be all right for me.
You say that, but you soon get used to it, and then it soon goes. But again, you've got to look at the makeup of apprenticeships at the minute. Mm-hmm. More and more are 19 plus candidates. Mm-hmm. So again, it's what you want to stand for. Now for me and everyone else at Baltic, it's very much pushing for those higher salaries, because we can see how good our apprentices are. We know how much of an impact they're going to have, and we believe it's the right thing to do. To give them a decent salary. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's going to help them. They're going to be able to get set up. It's also going to make them feel reassured, feel safe, feel valued, which means that the more valued they feel, the more positive an impact they'll have within that employment. So
what you're saying is real work and real wages.
Exactly. And
right.
Again, building on that data, this is stuff that we've pulled thanks to our data technician apprentices who've been revolutionary for us. So we do practice what we preach.
Oh, good.
And they're not on £50 a week.
Good plug.
Yeah. Well, you got to drop it in where you can.
He's got to get it in.
So we've seen retention improve when the salaries are higher. We've seen the results become better. So yeah, it is packed on proof.
Right, well, I'll give James another plug here. Recognition does also have an Baltic apprentice. National insurance is going to rise very shortly in April as we get to the new tax year. Do you think that, obviously it doesn't affect people under 25 and under, and you talk more about having more adult apprentices, or obviously over 18 you're an adult, but older apprentices. Do you think there should be some incentive there about maybe not having the national insurance increase, and maybe having a lower national insurance contribution for people who are on apprenticeships to
100%.
get through?
100%. I think recently apprenticeship grants and incentives have been removed for candidates who are 19 and above. So certain regions are supporting the roles. So Tees Valley, for instance, they have a grant in place to still offer that support to apprentices. But my opinion, and I know it's shared by a lot of people within the industry, that incentive should be there. Yes, we're pushing for higher wages because we know the impact that apprentices will have. But businesses should still get that support to bring these individuals on. because apprenticeships are a major route to support us out of the pandemic. They're a massive boost for the economy, for the industry. Employability statistics have shown what the positive moves that apprenticeships can make. So
we've got to get people in the right careers as well.
Exactly.
There's so many people who've gone off, further education, whatever sphere, and it's not right for them.
Yeah.
And back to our plumbing industry shortage. We've got oversupply of philosophy graduates and media studies, and they were, 50,000.
As a media studies graduate working in the media, I have to say, not everybody does it. It's not just Mickey Mouse for everyone.
So, no offence intended. But no, I mean, it's there's a lot of people who, sadly, I don't mean it nasty, but there's, you interview people, and there's people with degrees who aren't more employable at the end of a degree than they were before it, and that's really the point. I mean, people would be a lot better suited getting into a more vocational, hands-on thing, and that's what everyone's been saying for years. It's now beginning to happen.
Yeah, well, as James mentioned, a data analyst or data scientist apprenticeship, something that you could never have imagined 5 or 6 years ago. And I mean, if I was to go back now, I know I've just said I'm a media studies graduate working in the media, but if we went back and I was that 18-year-old again and I had the opportunities that we have now, I wouldn't be looking to do an apprenticeship. I know people who got a year, 2 years into their degree, and I'm sure you both do, who've changed their minds, decided it's not for them. They've then got all of that debt and they're back to square one, either doing a new apprenticeship, new degree, or something else. Okay, well, David, what's your thoughts on the national insurance rise? Obviously, you employ many people. It's going to have an impact. Do you think now's the time?
I mean, I'd prefer it wasn't happening. Is the honest answer, yes. But I mean, I think the government's got to be raising funds from somewhere, and you can't live in a utopian world of, no tax, zero tax, no tax rises. I mean, I think the support's been very good through the pandemic. It's got to happen sometime, but when's the ideal time? So,
well, there's never a good time.
It sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but yeah, it's got to happen at some point. It's it's going to be criticised whenever it happens. It's got to happen at some point.
I mean, it does always give the opportunity to maybe get some money in to recover some of the COVID costs and maybe bring it down in the future.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. I've just got one other thing to ask you as a Durham-based business. In the government's Levelling Up paper, Durham was one of the 9 areas that was invited to pitch itself in for a Devo deal, a Devolution deal. Having seen what's going on in Tees Valley and Manchester, where you've got mayors who are kind of knocking on the door and looking for opportunities, do you think Durham should maybe stick itself in and have a good go?
Based on, I think where devolution's gone in Wales and Scotland, I would have said no. But I think what we've seen in Teesside's, really what a positive devolution thing should be. I think what Ben Houchin's been achieving is great. Look at the standout programmes, and I know it's not all just him, but the Treasury coming up here, you'd have laughed 3 or 4 years ago. So I think that's really gone well. So I think there's definitely a case for it, but I'm fundamentally not a big fan of layers of government. You elect a government and you expect them to govern, and they don't just stick blocks in between. So personally, I'm not a big fan of devolution, but I'm not underplaying what's been achieved on our doorstep.
Okay, so what I'm getting from it is, if you've got the right people maybe looking for the right opportunities, you're not against it.
Correct, but I don't think you can really lay that out as a plan for government.
No, that's fair enough. Absolutely right. Well, thank you very much to the pair of you for coming in today, and I'm sure Graham's watching at home. I hope I didn't disappoint you too much, Graham. He'll be back next week to be your usual host of Business Unmuted. Thank you very much. Tune in next Wednesday at 5 o'clock on Graham Robb's LinkedIn.